In this video, we're going to look at three major achievements of US President Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon is a controversial figure in American history. He was the first president to resign from office, and when he left office, he was widely seen as a disgraced president. However, over time, historians have come to a much more favorable view of Nixon. In fact, many historians today rank him as one of the top 5 presidents of the United States. So in this video, we're going to look at 3 major achievements of Richard Nixon and try to understand Nixon is now viewed so favorably by historians. Prior to Richard Nixon, the closest the United States had come to establishing diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China was in 1946. When the United States sent an ambassador to China to negotiate a peace treaty with the Chinese, but this attempt at establishing relations quickly fell apart when the Chinese accused the US ambassador of spying. For the next 20 years, no official from the United States was allowed into China. However, in February of 1969, President Nixon announced that he would like to establish relations with China, and that he might even visit China himself. The Chinese were very suspicious of these statements, but they agreed to let Nixon send a ping-pong team to China in order to establish some kind of goodwill between the two nations. This turned out to be a brilliant move by Nixon, because it gave the Chinese an opportunity to show off their country to the world. When the ping-pong team left China to compete in an international competition in Japan, the Japanese provided them with American newspapers that reported on the success of the Chinese athletes. When the team returned home to China, they were greeted as heroes, which helped convince the Chinese leadership to meet with Nixon. On February 1972, Nixon became the first sitting president to visit China. During his visit, he met with Chinese leader Mao Zedong, and both leaders agreed to begin a new era of cooperation between the two nations. Richard Nixon also dramatically improved relations with another major power, the Soviet Union. Prior to Nixon's election, relations between the United States and the Soviet Union were at a near all-time low, but Nixon managed to improve relations enough that many feared he would actually go through with his campaign promise to end the Cold War. In May of 1972, Nixon visited the Soviet Union and signed a series of agreements with the Soviets that limited the growth of both nations' nuclear arsenals. And finally, we have to mention Nixon's accomplishments regarding the environment. Before Nixon took office, there were serious concerns about the future of the American wilderness. There were no national parks or wildlife refuges. Pollution was widespread, and Americans had become accustomed to the ugly, smog-filled skies of industrial cities. But with the support of his newly created Environmental Protection Agency, Nixon dramatically improved air and water quality across the nation. So those are 3 major achievements of Richard Nixon. Do you think Nixon deserves his newfound reputation as a great president? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to learn more about Richard Nixon, I've included several additional resources for you to check out. Richard Nixon was the most hated man in America. When he resigned in 1974, 66% of Americans disapproved of him. But over time, historians have come to appreciate his accomplishments, and today, there's actually a growing number of people who view him favorably. So in this video, we're going to go through 3 major achievements of US President Nixon. And if you like this video, please subscribe. So the first thing that Nixon did was end the war in Vietnam. By the time Nixon took office, the US was bogged down in a war that Americans didn't want and couldn't get out of. The previous president, Lyndon Johnson, had tried and failed, so it was up to Nixon to find a way out. In 1969, Nixon announced that he would seek a negotiated settlement with North Vietnam. This led to the Paris Peace Accords in 1973, which ended US involvement in the conflict. And 2 years later, Vietnam was reunited. While the war had been a disaster for America, Nixon ended it without a single major battle after he took office, and to this day, it remains the only time in American history that a sitting president ended a major foreign war. The second thing that Nixon did was open relations with China. For decades, the US and China had been bitter rivals. They supported opposing sides in the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And during the Cold War, they fiercely competed economically and militarily. But Nixon changed all of that. In 1972, he became the first American president to visit China, and, the following year, both countries established diplomatic relations. This opened up trade between the two nations and set the stage for China's eventual entry into the World Trade Organization. Relations with China remained strong to this day, and it's hard to believe that it was Nixon who started it all. The third thing that Nixon did was create the Environmental Protection Agency. In 1970, a report came out detailing the severe air and water pollution in the United States. It detailed how pollution had reached such high levels that across the country, 70 million people were getting sick each year. Nixon wanted to fix this, so he created the Environmental Protection Agency, which set standards for pollution and enforced them through fines and penalties. This led to cleaner air and water across the country, and today, millions of Americans are alive because of it. There are more things that Nixon did that were good for America, like opening relations with the Soviet Union and creating the National Cancer Institute, but those are topics for another video. If you enjoyed this one, please subscribe, and if you want to learn more about the presidents of the United States, check out the playlist.